Did you know that only one pharaoh of Egypt actually ruled from the comfort of a wheelchair? Pharaoh Akhenaten, the man who changed the religion of an entire nation. How did he rule from a wheelchair? Let's find out in today's episode of Pharaohs of Egypt. Welcome back, everyone. It's me. And today we are going to talk about the only pharaoh of Egypt that had a disability and ruled from a wheelchair. There is some controversy behind this claim, but we will get to that later. Now, first of all, how do we even know he existed? And why is there so much controversy surrounding him? Well, like most things about ancient Egypt, his existence was discovered by Napoleon Bonaparte during his campaign in the Middle East. And while retreating from his Egyptian campaign, he ordered the Rosetta Stone to be taken with them when they left. The Rosetta Stone was the key to unlocking the mysteries of hieroglyphs. Unfortunately, the stone was lost again during the Battle of Alexandria, but eventually it fell into the hands of Thomas Young, a British polymath. He began to decipher the hieroglyphs with the help of Jean-François Champollion. In 1824, John Gardner Wilkinson visited the site of Thebes and made copies of the tomb inscriptions. This eventually led to the discovery of many more sites belonging to this mysterious king. Even though King Tut was the most famous ancient Egyptian ruler at the time, nobody knew who his father was or who he succeeded. After years of research, it was revealed that he succeeded a king named Akhenaten. While digging through the ruins of Thebes, they also found his tomb, which had been robbed throughout history, just like most royal tombs. Akhenaten was known for changing the religion of Egypt from believing in multiple gods to worshipping only one god, Aten. Aten was the sun disk, so he is usually shown on the king's forehead in various reliefs and artworks. The capital of Egypt was also moved to Amarna during his reign, where his son, King Tut, would later move it back to Thebes. His official queen was Nefertiti, but he had several other wives, including a royal wife named Kia, and others whose names were lost to history. He had several daughters too, but only 2 survived to adulthood. One of them was the famous Princess Smenkhare, who some believe was a queen regnant after King Tut's death. So what was his disability and how did he rule from a wheelchair? Let's have a look at some of the evidence. During excavations in Tel El Marna, a plaster cast of a bust of Akhenaten was found. The bust shows the pharaoh with an unusually long skull and an exaggerated depiction of his belly. If we ignore the exaggeration of his belly, which was probably done for artistic purposes, it can be seen that the sides of his head are sloping, giving it an elongated shape. Also, according to a few historians, this bust may not be accurate because plaster casts were often used to repair broken statues, and this one has been repaired in a way that gives the pharaoh an odd appearance. Another piece of evidence that supports this theory comes from the famous bust of Lady Nefertiti, where her head was awkwardly joined to her body. Another reason why people doubt this bust is that the facial features don't match between the upper and lower part of the statue. According to some researchers, this could have been fixed if the head was indeed a replacement. The same goes for a few other statues. But there is one more thing that supports this theory. You see, one of the limestone tablets found in the Theban tombs contains a list of goods sent from the royal treasury to the house of one of Akhenaten's servants. Among the listed items, we see the word charis, which means let in English. Now, charis doesn't necessarily mean a wheelchair, but ancient Egyptian chariots had 2 large wheels in the back and 2 small ones in the front. So it was a kind of 4-wheeled cart. Some scholars disagree with this interpretation, saying that charis could also mean a stretcher, but we cannot deny that Akhenaten could have used both a stretcher and a wheelchair interchangeably. The problem here is that some of these items were listed near the end of Akhenaten's reign, and by that time he already had a strange appearance due to the illness he had. He was hardly able to walk, so he must have used a wheelchair for longer periods. This leads us to the question, what illness did he have? There are a lot of theories behind his illness, and some say that he suffered from Parkinson's disease. Others say he had a form of dwarfism or pituitary gigantism. However, a recent study suggests that he likely had an advanced stage of both malaria and tuberculosis. This would explain the list of items being sent to his residence from the royal treasury. The symptoms of these diseases, such as fever and weakness, could have led to anemia and bone lesions. Bone lesions cause severe bone pain and make walking difficult. In Akhenaten's case, this could have been the reason why he needed a wheelchair to move around. The theory is further supported by the fact that malaria is common in the Nile Delta region where Akhenaten lived, and the symptoms match the description of his illness. Unfortunately, none of his remains have ever been found, so it's impossible to accurately determine the cause of his condition. But what about his appearance? Does his strange appearance support any of these theories? Well, yes and no. See, the theory that he had a form of dwarfism is now widely rejected because there is no evidence that he was shorter than other males of his time. He may have looked weird, but he was most likely 173 centimeters tall, according to a report by National Geographic. So he was taller than most men today. A recent analysis of his skull showed that he had a high degree of cranial sutures, meaning that the bones of his skull fused prematurely, which could have caused his head to be misshapen. This condition can be caused by a variety of factors, including genetic abnormalities, malnutrition, and environmental toxins. As for his strange belly, there is a theory that it was a result of a parasitic infection. A few scientists analyzed the mummies of his daughter and wife and found traces of a parasitic infection called ascariasis. This parasite causes an inflammation of the abdomen, leading to a distended belly. So it's possible that Akhenaten also suffered from this condition. But since he is the only Egyptian ruler who had a distended belly in all the artwork, this isn't a satisfying explanation. It could be that he simply wanted to emphasize Akhenaten's physical condition or use it as a symbol of fertility. Most likely, it's a combination of everything. There is no doubt that he had a strange appearance, but some of his features can be explained by his illnesses. Unfortunately, he is often depicted in a way that makes him look more bizarre than he really was. When King Tut took over, he reverted back to the old traditional style of artwork, making his successor look more like an ancient Egyptian pharaoh. Another question that arises is, how did a disabled person become the Pharaoh of Egypt? According to the ancient Egyptian beliefs, only the pharaoh could speak on behalf of the people and communicate with the gods. This was extremely important because the pharaoh was considered the embodiment of Horus, the sky god. So it would be unthinkable for someone who was unable to speak or interact with the world around him to be considered the vessel of Horus. It's unlikely that Akhenaten was completely unable to speak. He may have had difficulty speaking fluently, but this wouldn't have prevented him from carrying out his duties. His advisors could have helped him write down what he wanted to say and read his statements to the public. As for his inability to walk, this wouldn't have been a problem either because most of his work was ceremonial. All he had to do was preside over religious ceremonies and festivals. There were priests and officials who handled the day-to-day affairs of the kingdom. The pharaoh's role was mainly symbolic. Of course, he still had to travel occasionally, but there were always people accompanying him to help him along the way. So his illness wouldn't have significantly hindered his ability to perform his duties. It's also worth mentioning that during those times, having a disability didn't carry the same stigma as it does today. People with disabilities were still considered valuable members of society and their needs were taken care of. Ancient Egyptians believed that having a disability didn't diminish one's value as a human being, and they made efforts to accommodate them as much as possible. This is evident in the many works of art depicting people with disabilities participating in everyday life. They weren't viewed as inferior or incapable. All in all, Akhenaten's story shows that it's possible for anyone to achieve greatness, regardless of their physical limitations. With the right support and determination, he managed to change the religion of an entire nation despite facing significant obstacles. He was a true example of the Egyptian spirit, which celebrated diversity and encouraged everyone to strive for greatness. So what do you think? Do you think he ruled from a wheelchair? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please consider subscribing. Thanks for watching. See you next time.